Oh, well, it's lovely to see you, Kerrie. I'll introduce you formally. This is Kerrie, the lovely Kerrie Higham from, well, I know you from Barrow because that's where I met you last, but you
Yeah,
live in Morecambe, don't you?
I live in Higham, so
Oh, Higham, okay.
yeah, so it's just a little village. It's just to the left of Morecambe, so a little village right at the end of the promenade. So yeah,
Beautiful. And you're one of the directors of the Well Communities, aren't
yeah,
you?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
And where are you now with the Well Communities? You're in Lancaster,
Yeah,
Barrow and Furness.
for Lancaster, Morecambe, Barrow, Liverpool, Central Lancashire, which includes Preston, Chorley, Leyland, and then Fleetwood. Yeah, Fleetwood as well as Lancaster and Morecambe. So yeah, quite a lot.
Wow, amazing. That's fantastic coverage. Well done.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'll chat to Dave about you and about how this all came about. And you were just explaining there about the picture behind you. Do you want to tell me about that picture?
Okay, so this is Lancaster Castle. So this is where David, my husband, founder of the Well. This is where he did his last prison sentence, and it was kind of like his saving grace, really. I think the community feel that was within the prison wing. Just the people that were in there, the support that he got. You know, he was introduced to a 12-step program, but also became hugely aware of the kind of the gaps really in the services, because he kept seeing that many men coming back. So when he got to the point of being, you know, ready for recovery, you know, they'd be sending people out on the way and, you know, like cheering them on and everything. And then, you know, 3 months later, 6 months later, despite everyone's protests and beliefs that I'll never be coming back and I'll never use again, that the same men were kind of like coming back through the door. And so I think David's eyes and ears were open really to a lot of the reasons and a lot of the excuses and a lot of the whys and wherefores of, you know, why people were returning to prison when they wholeheartedly believed that, you know, this was the last sentence and they'd got everything that they needed. So I think what he'd seen was like a real lack of community support. So, you know, there was a great community in there, but then people are released into communities and there really isn't anything for them. And that had been his experience as well. So he'd actually got really, he's a Scouser, you know, lived in Liverpool all his life till he came to this place, and you know, himself. I mean, he got released in Lancaster and had a really tricky time, you know, right at the start. So, you know, where do you make friends? You know, where is the support? Yeah, so I think, you know, the ideas kind of formed from there, and then, you know, through his own experience and then working in services, you know, David kind of went straight into volunteering, working in services, and again, you know, had his eye on a few things and thought, well, that doesn't work and that doesn't work. You know, a lot of things are within service hours, you know, and we all know that addiction doesn't take place between, you know, 9 to 5 on Friday, but a lot of the support options. But I also think at the time, this has been my experience as well, there wasn't really anybody working in service who you could identify with. There was like it was like a medical sort of approach, you know, to the problem. And I think, yeah, in some respects, you know, there is a medical element, you know, to addiction, but I think ultimately it's an emotional, spiritual, mental kind of problem, you see. And I think there was a lack of identification of people when you're in services. So it's quite hard to have honest conversations with professionals, because they almost became transactional. I'll tell you what you want so I can get what I want. And ultimately, as an addict, I want more drugs. I want more methadone. I want anything on top of my methadone. And so, yeah, they were just quite hard relationships, you know, in which to be honest and kind of make any strides forward. So I think collectively, you know, we're everybody who works for the Well, we're all in recovery. You know, we're all recovering drug addicts. We're all recovering alcoholics. We've all got a story to tell about a service that we've been in, or a prison that we've been in, or a certain doctor or a certain approach. And, you know, we're not really looking to rubbish any of that or change any of that, but there are gaps within all of those things. And I think the main gaps are out of our service provision, being able to speak to like-minded people and being able to recover amongst your peers. So yeah.
Yeah. And were you with Dave then? Were you married then when he was serving his last prison sentence, or did you recover?
No, the funny thing is, so just to the left here,
Yeah.
I lived just down the hill. So I was going to NA meetings just to the left of here. So it's quite funny because all the while that he was in the castle, I'm kind of like trotting past there every day, to go into town and one thing and another. And then when he got released, 6 weeks actually after he was released, he came into the NA meeting that I was going to. And it's really quite funny because I'd actually gone to the meeting that night purely because my oldest 2 kids were doing me head in, and they were just fighting, and they were, and at the time, any sort of noise, I was quite chaotic myself, quite new in recovery and stuff. I was like, I'm getting out, I'm going out for an hour, don't move kind of thing. And anyway, I'd gone to this meeting and Dave was in the meeting. Anyway, so, this new boy, that lot, being new myself, I'm like, all right, and one thing and another. Anyway, we'd had a little bit of a chat, and Dave was saying, because the pastor of the wing, the recovery wing, and the Christian pastor, the reverend of the prison, he and her had struck up a really, really good relationship. And one of the things that they'd seemed to do, it might be an idea, was to create a church specifically for a group of people. Because I think, this is probably a separate conversation, but entering church when you're new in recovery, especially female, is a really, really difficult thing to do. So they've kind of seen that as one of the gaps and a way that they could strengthen the community. So David said, oh, we've got a church going, and do you want to come and all that lot? And it was really funny because I rung my sister after the meeting and I went, when you meet someone, when people say they've just met the person they're going to marry, I went, that's how I feel. But it wasn't a lust thing. I wasn't thinking, I'll have a bit of him.
Yeah.
Just this, like, something's just happened. And I remember ringing my sponsor saying, I've just met someone and I think I'm going to marry. So I only had about a year in or something. She was like, oh, I forgot, you're mad. Yeah, I said, I'm like, I don't believe I'm mad. I just don't believe I'm mad. I really feel, I feel quite strongly about this. So anyway, we got married.
And was Dave aware of this connection?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, did he feel the same?
No, I don't think he felt the same.
Oh, that's so funny. But it is like a knowing, isn't it? It's like when you meet somebody, it's like it's more than just a thought. It's a deep-rooted thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it felt very real, and it was different to all my other like sudden connections, which were largely rooted in, oh yeah, you're pretty fit, kind of wanting something, or wanting to get me on way in some way. It was just it was strange. It threw me, because I never felt like that. I mean, I weren't someone who every time I went out with someone thought this is the one, or so.
How interesting. And then how long was it after that you got married?
So we was together for 6 years. But I mean we was together almost immediately. So again, 6 weeks in, he was 6 weeks out of prison. I think I was still on my Subutex at the time. So I wasn't even kind of clean, by NA standards, although I'd not drunk and taken drugs for probably about 13 months, I don't think. So, I suppose the odds were really stacked against us. A lot of advice that we were getting is, oh, you need to stay away 6 weeks out of prison, and, you need to focus on this and you need to focus on that. And we didn't, but, who's to say? It wasn't the wrong thing to do, so.
No. Yeah. Absolutely, it's beautiful, and look what's come of it. You've got 2 beautiful little boys. You've got a fabulous project. So tell me a bit more about the project and how that came about. I know, like you were saying, Dave really started thinking about the idea. Fermented was initiated whilst he was in prison, but then what were the steps that you took?
Well, I think Dave. So as I say, he'd kind of started volunteering and then working in services, and he'd come back to work in a service locally, because I mean a lot of time when you work in services you travel. He would be going to Chorley and Skelmersdale, which are a fair distance from where we lived, and then he actually came back to Lancaster and worked in a service in Lancaster, and could you know, whilst he was in that service, saying, we need something for a Saturday. I've got an idea. Anyway, they wouldn't let him work on a Saturday. They wouldn't let him, you know, like take some hours from the week and do it on a Saturday. So he had this idea that he was just ready to just go, right, I'm going to do this on a Saturday because I'll see what's needed. And they said no. Anyway, I mean, that's to our fortune, really, that they said no. And then we just thought, right, we'll just start, you know, we'll just start with the social club idea, because I think the main thing was, in our early recovery, we were travelling to Blackburn and to St Anne's, which are good, like 45-minute journeys, 1-hour journeys from where we live, because there wasn't really much recovery, you know, where we lived. There was a couple of NA meetings, but there wasn't a mass amount of socialising outside of that. I think I may have mentioned this in our recovery chat the other day, but it's also really tough to just go to a couple of meetings a week and then be changed around your family, because all families need to change. So you can come home and be saying different things and having different ideas and trying your best, you know, to maybe not lose your temper and be a bit more patient and speak nicer of people. These can all be like really strange changes, you know, for the families that you're used to living in, that you're used to living in. So I think we wanted to just create a space where everybody could go. So whether you've got a long time in recovery, or whether you're new in recovery, whether you've just got to meetings, whether you've just left prison, whether you don't want anything to do with meetings, but it's somewhere where services, you know, can signpost you to, I think it was just about creating a recovering community that really people could access, you know, with the children. So it started off as that. It was Dave. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I thought it was the worst idea I'd ever heard of. Really did. I was just like, oh, I'm not going to a social club. Like, I'm not up for this. And I couldn't see, you know, I really couldn't see the point. I mean, I was on board immediately. You know, I was, you know, volunteered for a very long time. But, you know, Dave kind of stumped up the rent himself because he really believed in it. So first 3 months, he went, right, you know, we'll pay the first 3 months rent. We did have to charge people to come in £2.50. So we needed 15 people to pay £2.50 to cover the rent. But when we first started, about 9 of those people were volunteers, but they all paid £2.50.
Oh, bless them.
I know, because, you know, they believed in it as well. And then after 3 months, you know, we got some funding. I think we got our first pot of funding. And then, you know, from then on, the rest is history, really. So we just started building on. And
how long ago was that you sort of started with that little seedling idea?
8 and a half. Oh, and then, yeah. How old's my son? So 7.5 years ago.
Wow.
That was 7.5 years ago on a Saturday. And then when we did that for about 18 months, and then, because Dave and I were both still in work, I mean, we weren't paid by the well. We were, you know, other people got paid before we got paid. So I was working I just didn't finish my degree and then was working in a children's home. And he was actually working for a kind of like a prison representative service. And anyway, he'd been in the right place at the right time, and there'd been some funding. There was an idea for some funding to help people through the gate. So that's where we started the housing project in Barrow. So we went from the social club to the housing project in Barrow. So that was within about 18 months. So.
Wow. And was the social club in Barrow?
No.
Oh, wow, okay. So I know Barrow really well. That's where I grew up as a little girl. My grandparents lived there. So for me, I was thrilled when I found out that you were doing what you were doing in Barrow. And it was lovely to come and see the well. And it is an absolute godsend, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's critical. I mean, you know, I'm in recovery, and it's so important that there are these places where people can be encouraged and motivated really towards change, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? That's the vibe I got when I came and sat in your group.
Yeah, it really is. And I think as well, so, you know, we some people do need to go away to rehab. I mean, Dave will always tell you he needed removing from society. You know, my experience was I didn't have the option. You know, nobody ever gave me the option to go to rehab or to go and have a little break, you know, somewhere else to get myself right. But I don't know if that's because it's a male-female thing, but I was very much at home with my children. My probably recovery journey could have been a lot easier. I mean, if I was coming into recovery now in the area where we live, you really are blessed, because there are that many things going on. And for us, it is about recovering where you live. You know, I mean, there are exceptions. Some people do need removing. They need to build themselves back up, build some family relationships, build some recovery capital, some social capital to then, you know, return to. But I think if there is enough going on where you live, there is no real reason. There's no real reason to move, because then a lot of people struggle with the return home. Whereas if you've recovered in your own community and there's support there for the family as well, and you're used to walking past all the places where you would have scored from, and all the places that hold the bad memories, and the off licenses, and the nightclubs, and, you know, the ex-boyfriends, and, you know, everything that comes with that kind of lifestyle. If you're kind of walking past those things and dealing with those triggers on a daily basis, you're going to be okay. But quite often going away to a rehab and then returning home again completely changed, being away, removed from society for 6 months, and then you just get plonked back into what you have known. Some people can find it really, really difficult. So we're just always looking to make places much better, and, you know, enable people to have lots of access to support so they can recover where they live.
Yeah, and I think I really do think it's important that it's visible too, because I think, like you say, you know, when people have been problematic in the community, I'm not saying everybody's problematic, but, you know, in some cases people and their drug use and drinking may have caused problems in the community. I mean, what an absolute inspiration it is then to see, so to destigmatise the recovery. That's why I'm so open and honest and do so much in the community like yourselves around visible recovery, because if people don't know it exists, how are they gonna know that there's hope?
I know, and that's been my experience. And I found, so I mean, not so much now, because it's probably a good 14 years now since I've used, but very much in my early days of recovery, a lot of the people that I used to use with, they just cheer you on, because people either leave, or they die. And that you don't really hear of, oh God, have you seen that? And they've turned their life around, and, you know, they look great, or they've got, you know, this is happening, or this is happening. It's just all of a sudden, when you're in like an addict kind of community, people just disappear. You never know when. That's what I say. You either assume they're dead, they've gone to prison, or they've moved. You know, recovered or doing well is never really an option, you know, in that kind of way of thinking of where people have gone. So I found, you know, a lot of people, you know, really, really rooted for me, and they'd be like, don't talk to us, go away, you know, get away from us, have you got a fag, but go away kind of thing, you know, and, you know, keep doing what you're doing. And then what has happened is a lot of these people are still coming into services, and we've just had a lad recently, you know, who I used to use with, and we'd seen him busking on the streets in Lancaster, you know, like in really quite a desperate state. And it was only about 3 weeks ago, and he went, I've had enough. And it's like, well, you know, we'll see what we can do, you know. And anyway, he's in Barrow now. But I just think, you know, how nice to be able to, you know, to be able to do that for people. And then you're not actually promoting any sort of message other than going and doing your business, not taking drugs, doing quite well where you live. Yeah,
and getting on with recovery, really, because you've got to invest time and energy in it. And that's what I loved about your project in Barrow, was it was really quite set out normally, like, you know, like a normal life, but with real clear healthy structure as well, you know, getting up, going to the gym, you know, going to groups, supporting one another, helping in the house, you know, all of those things that we take for granted, but people, when they're in early stage recovery, they don't realise that that's all part of it.
No.
And then, you know, encouraging them to go to 12-step meetings. I think that's part of the regime, isn't it, that you encourage, is that daily attendance at 12-step meetings.
Yeah. And for us, I think, because it's the one thing collectively for us as a team, I think there may only be one or two that are not in fellowship, which is fine, you know, their recovery is their recovery. But I think it's something, I think the faith element, I think the power greater element, I think having a programme, that's something that worked for all of us, because we all come from a long line of failed attempt, and I think that's where we all landed. So whilst we do, you know, we do encourage other methods for our project, for our housing project. I mean, if you come to the hubs, it's very, very different. You know, we've got lots of support groups that aren't rooted in fellowship, that aren't rooted in faith, that aren't rooted in the concept of a power greater. The kind of, you know, based on recovery capital, behaviour change, and, you know, all the concepts kind of away from fellowship. But the housing, our housing and our DAYAB structure is very much built around 12 steps, because it's the one thing that worked for all of us. But I mean, in that, Claire, I think we did a report the other day. I think we've got 48% success rate after a year. 48% of people still clean after a year.
That's amazing, isn't it? That's a miracle in itself, you know.
Yeah, and if you was a betting person, you know, I mean, not to, you know, some of your other kind of treatment kind of facilities and stuff, you know, they don't have those figures. They don't have those figures. You can go on the websites. That's not me saying they don't have it. You know, you can kind of like go on the websites and do a little bit of digging yourself. But, you know, to 48% of people who've come through to still be abstinent after a year, it's a huge success.
It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. I think it's great. I do love what you're doing, and you know, I'm a massive champion of yours. You know, and that's why I came to see what you were doing, because I loved what I loved what I'd read and what I'd seen, and I just wanted to see it in the flesh. You know, it's inspirational to be part of it. So tell me a little bit more about your hubs, because obviously now with this pandemic that we're going through, everybody's struggling. I mean, I'm getting, like I was telling you the other day, I'm inundated with phone calls that I never used to get from people that I've possibly worked with in the corporate sector who are now struggling a lot, so high functioning addicts. So tell me a little bit about how you're dealing with this whole pandemic experience.
Okay, so hubs, because we started with hubs and the, you know, places for, you know, people in recovery in the community. So, you know, our model is very much underpinned, you know, by these spaces. So obviously with this happening and you've got to close your doors, how are we then going to reach people? So we've took the hubs to a digital platform. So we've got one that's actually starting, a Fleetwood one at 11 o'clock today. I mean, it's not been easy, Claire, because, you know, there's different demographics of people, you know, in different areas. So some of our, in one of our areas, the average age of the attendees is much higher, say, than those in Lancaster. So trying to help people move to a digital platform, it's really, really difficult. I mean, all of us who sit down and use computers every day have struggled with Zoom. I didn't even know you could do a WhatsApp conference call before people, you know, till all this. So what we are trying to do is set up hubs. So in each of the locations where we had a physical hub where people could come and, you know, visit us on a weekly basis, and we're trying to replicate that in a digital platform. So this week we'll have 4. I think we had 8 to get up and running. Oh no, 5 actually. We will have done 5 of those this week. But what we're having to look at is how well they work. You know, how well are they working, and in some of the areas, are we reaching, you know, enough people, and what kind of value? Because I think it's all well and good going, right, this is what we're going to do. You know, we can totally kind of transport our service digitally, but one of the big things for us is about feeling, it's about experience. You know, it's very much about our branding, because I think branding is very much a feeling and an experience. It's like, we'll go to certain places. I mean, for me, rightly or wrongly, I love Starbucks, and I know they don't pay the tax and everything, but I really like Starbucks. And the one thing about Starbucks is no matter where you go in the world, you know what you're getting. I know what my oat milk latte is going to taste like. And that's why I go, because I know what I'm going to get. And I think for so very long, people know what they're going to get from us. And then now we've moved to this digital, which is, at the moment, it's the best that we can do. But we don't know yet that it's working. Now, I know in some areas it's working and we're getting some really, really good feedback. But are people valuing the digital interactions? You know, would people really rather have the phone calls? So we're kind of trying to work out really what people want from us. And I think when you've got in your groove, I don't know about you, Claire, but you just work instinctively. A lot of things you don't have to think about. You just know that's the next right thing, that's the next right thing, and that's the ways that you kind of go through your day. But in doing this, nothing feels instinctive. So
Yeah.
even the smallest decisions feel like we've really, really got to think about them. And where we felt like we were in our groove and we've created something that people love, and we know they love it because so many people come and attend. They turn up week in. We see hundreds of people, week in, week out on various different sites. But it's, I suppose, what it's trying to do is create that same experience, that same feeling, and that same pull to what we do in this way, and it's not easy.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching this and they want to get into contact with one of your hubs, or they want to find out a little bit more, how would they go about it, Kerrie?
Okay, well, I mean, there's various ways. I mean, we've got our website, so you could contact us on our website. So that's www.thewellcommunities.co.uk. Yeah. We have got we've got two head offices, two main offices. We've got one in Barrow, one in Morecambe. Really bad with phone numbers for these because I never ring them. But what I can, so you would contact there. We're on Twitter. So you could follow us on Twitter, which is at the well 2, and then we've got our Facebook page. So there are loads of ways that you can find out what we're doing. I mean, your best protocol is generally the Facebook page or the 2 phone numbers.
Okay. And we can put those under this once we've posted this, because we're pre-recording this and we're going to put it on Facebook via YouTube. We're going to upload it to YouTube, and then what we can do is when we post it on our page, we can put the numbers underneath any contact information, can't we?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, and then you would get directed. So whichever area you was interested in, we would have a community connector, working in that area, that specific region, that could direct you, to where it is that you want it to be. But I would say to anyone who's kind of coming at this from out of town, I mean, all hubs are different, because they're made up of different people that have got different needs, so they don't all follow the same format. So, what I've said to people is, even say people who we're working with in Chorley who wouldn't otherwise get to Lancaster, come and join a Lancaster hub. Come and see some faces out of town, because what would be a really nice thing to do is when all this is over, you could then physically pay a visit to that hub, and you've made some friends, outside of this. You can put some faces to names. So do a bit of a hub hop yourself and, get around and meet people.
Yeah, and find out what suits you. And what I also love about what you do is that you really encourage family engagement as well. Can you tell us just a little bit about that before we finish?
Yeah, so family, I mean, one of our directors, Polly Parker, she actually volunteered in service where Dave worked in Preston years and years ago, before we started the Well. And so family, as soon as Dave came up with this idea, she was very much on board. Their daughter had become an alcoholic. These were 2 teachers, like kids had seemingly had really stable life, gone to private school and one thing another, and then lo and behold, one of the children turns out to be an alcoholic, which was just complete shock. How does this happen? How does this happen to us? So Polly being Polly, kind of got involved, went to get some support, got involved in services and worked alongside Dave, and was just really, really on board with the idea. So she's been one of our directors, right from the start. So right at the Well's very conception, the thread of family has been there right at the start of it. I mean, I think from our own experience of needing a place for our own families to come and to understand what's going on, but then I think also with having Polly on board as well, who is a big champion, member of, well, I probably shouldn't say because it's anonymity, but fellowships and one thing.
Family fellowships that support people.
Yeah, so that's always been right at the heart of what we do. And, with the hubs, the guys who come through our housing, so with the Barrow housing, it's kind of like, quite a long way away. Some people do actually travel to get there. So the hubs will be used as spaces where family members can come and visit, because sometimes that journey is just a little bit, it's a little bit too long to take. And then there's a structure in place. So Saturdays are dedicated to families as well. So a lot of the first stagers will come to the hubs on a Saturday, and then their families and the children get to come and spend some time with them and kind of all recover together, really. So we kind of help facilitate. None of us are specialist family workers, but we've all worked on putting our families back together.
Yeah, and I think that personally, from my own experience, I think that's far outweighs professionals coming in and trying to facilitate that lived experience. That's why I love what you do. That's why I do what I do. Everything that you do and that I do, it's all to do with lived experience. It's not about professionals coming in and doing for. It's about, look, you know, I'm not saying that my way is the right way, but this is what worked for me, and these are the roads I took, and these are the connections I made. You know, if you get it.
Important that these spaces are open to families as well, because there are so many places where only the individual can go to, that family members can never really step foot in, so they never really get to understand. So I think it's just to have a social element to it, because I don't think that a lot of recovery takes place really in a therapeutic conversation, or like a one-on-one therapeutic conversation. But if you've got like a recovery focused therapeutic environment where everyone's committed, where people are kind of wearing their heart on the sleeves, you know, directing people in the right way, holding their hand, arm around the shoulder, I think that just sort of environment, not right, we're going to sit down for an hour and we're going to look at this. It's not really how a lot of the things work. It's just being around and having an environment where everyone's doing this and everyone continues to do this. You know, I think, you know, building your families back up after you've been in addiction takes a very, very, very long time. And I'm nowhere complete in that process. But a day at a time, you know, I'm closer to it. So yeah.
We're all on a road. We're all on a... Do you know what I've discovered in recovery is it isn't an end. There isn't an end. It's a process of living and learning to live and utilising all these amazing tools, meeting people who might share something with you and it'll get you and you just think, oh, wow, you know, that's recovery, and it's ongoing. And the further down the line, I mean, I've been sober, clean and sober 22 years this year. And you know what? The longer I'm sober, the less I think I know. You know, because I think we're just learning all the time about ourselves, aren't we? And applying all these amazing things that we learn, and letting go of some things that don't work. And, you know.
Well, I think in my experience, Claire, is you have a growth spurt and then you get a little bit stable and then you live in the new things that you've learned about yourself. And then when all your ducks are lined up, then something else seems to happen. So another issue that wasn't an issue till you could find space, you know, to address the issue. Kind of like opens up. So I found I've changed so much, but I just think if you just keep moving forward, you do get the opportunities to really unravel everything and see what's gone on. And you know,
and cope with life on life's terms, isn't it? That's the whole purpose of it. You know, like you say, life happens, you know, births, deaths, you know, stuff that I'd never dealt with any of those sorts of things in active addiction. So when those started to emerge in recovery, it was like a whole new ball game. But thanks goodness I've got, you know, tools in place and acquired new ones along the way. You know, I said do whatever it takes. My message to everybody always is do whatever it takes. You know, have counselling, go to rehab, you know, go to as many meetings as you can, you know, if go to church, go to the synagogue, whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, it's so lovely to speak to you, Kerrie. I'm really aware that you've got to go and open one of your hubs. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love speaking to you. I consider you one of my friends now. So
well, I'm really proud of that.
Oh yeah, I do, and I love you both. I think you're both hysterical as well. I think you are proper good people doing great work, but with a really nice heart and a fabulous sense of humour, yours and Dave's. So yeah, it's lovely to see you, sweetie.
Thank you, and you, and thanks.
And thank you for coming. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.